We're doing it with the least, but we have sparkle scotch, okay? It's blurry. It's not HD. It's not HD. Look, man, it's not HD, okay? I lost the pops. My phone's bare, okay? I can't stand it up on anything. It just falls down. Because it's like slippery. Why is it so blurry? Why is it so blurry? I don't have any blur on. I don't have touch up my appearance. Look, bro, just look at the nice background, okay? So we are in chapter 4 of the Oxford Book of Science Fiction Stories. So each chapter is a short story by someone else. A lot of them are from ye olden times. If Frankenstein were shorter, I'm sure it would be in here, as it was the beginning of all of this. Mary Shelley is the one who started this genre at age 19. This is a good one. This is a good one, y'all. I really liked this one. It was very inventive, and it made me almost feel like, oh, maybe, like, is this real? Did this happen? Could I find this museum? I actually Googled the museum to see if it was real. So it starts out, we're at Tyburn College Museum. So we've got a life-size statue in a corner. And it's like, it looks very real. Like it's photorealistic, hyper-realistic, everything except it's a greenish metal. We've got Professor Kelvin, which is like a funny science professor name because Kelvin, of the geology department. That's who the metal man was. So he was Kelvin of the geology department. So, like during summer break, he would go to Mexico, to South America, to Central America, I'm sure to Africa, to wherever he wanted to go, whatever geologists do, looking at rocks and stuff. And he had a disorder, which is kind of like the driving force in his life. Like he liked geology pre-knowing about his condition. But knowing about his condition, now he's like, oh, maybe if I find a gem, it'll cure me. And then speaking of Frankenstein, we get to a point pretty shortly in the narrative perspective style is kind of similar to Frankenstein. As the reader, we start with kind of like an outsider's perspective, and that's what we're kind of starting with here. So this is kind of starting, it's told from like Professor Kelvin's bud, like his colleague. So we have our colleague all of a sudden who's in Mexico now doing geological things. A ship pulls up and drops a chest and is like, this is for you, bye. And he was like, the heck is this chest? Like, I don't think I want to open this. I don't know what this is. And inside was the metal man, and with a letter. So, and he recognized the face, obviously, as his colleague, Professor Kelvin. He's like, oh my God. And he's really upset. And just like in Frankenstein, he reads the letter, right? So we're reading letters now. That's how it'll go for the rest of the story. We're reading the letter. He goes to El Rio de la Sangre, which is the river of blood. He's hoping to find radium-bearing minerals, just doing what you do, excavating places that you probably have no permission to be in because it's not America. And you're like, I'm an American, so I'm just going to go and like dig things up and whatever. Like no thought. So he assembles like a glider plane, like you see those planes where it's just like you with your wings, kind of old timey style, and you just glide, follows the river, and he sees like a lake, this pool of heavy gas. It's green. And he's like, oh, I bet there's some sick minerals in there. So he dives down in. Okay, let's just go into a pool of the green fire heavy gas. Sure. Well, he does have a terminal diagnosis, so why not, right? I mean, let's just go for it. I plunged into the pool. The gas was not suffocating as I had anticipated. And there's a sphere of deep red marked with huge oval spots in black. That was smooth and metallic. He's seeing spikes that seemed of yellow fire. He's seeing lots of things. He's seeing stuff that is that looks inorganic but is organic inside of this gaseous lake. And then there's an interesting description: lambent argent, lambent argent. And the silver mist was drawn to the yellow points, condensing, curdling, until the whole globe was a ball of lambent argent. So I wonder if lambent is like luminous and argent is like some old-timey name for a color. So let's see. Lambent is lucent, luminous, refulgent, scintillating, sparkling, bright, ablaze, aglow, alight. Argent is a synonym of lambent. Once he starts seeing the blue radiance, then he's like drawn downward. So, he reaches like a certain point and it's you're done. Like you can't go up anymore. And it pulls you all the way down. And at the bottom is red shining sand. And then he's seeing like lights around him. He's getting kind of freaked out. He's noticing that he's starting to glow blue. He has concerns. So he had a particularly unpleasant feeling of helpless fear. He's in a tight spot. He can't go up. He doesn't understand the creatures and objects around him. There are other birds on the ground, on the sand around it, like periodically around, and they have turned to metal. He's pondering about the transmutation of elements. So he's like, it's kind of like alchemical, and we humans don't know how to do that. And maybe this gas, taking this a little outside the book, like maybe if we can the gas and then we take it somewhere, we could turn other things into metal. You could study the properties of this gas and maybe figure out how to transmute things that people care about other than random metal. So he's already changing to light green metal. He's like, oh my God, I'm going to like just die down here. No one's going to know what happened to me. And here I am. I'm just metal. So, but there's these lights and there's these spheres of lights. And he's like afraid of the lights. And there's like all these other structures that are spiky and metallic. And he doesn't understand, they're kind of freaking him out. He's freaked out. He finds some vegetation that is purple, and he eats the purple berries. The berries demetallicize him. So he crushes some up and puts some in his water bottle. So he's like, we need this. And he comes to a river. He's like, oh no, where do I go? And I wrote in the margin, swim away. Like, I'm just like, why don't you just take the river? Just take it. Take it back. You might get into some dicey spots, but at least you won't be dead. He finds these slender cylinders of black metal that are 100 feet tall. And at the top is a great orange flame, like a big balloon. He felt intrinsically that the light orbs were hunting for him. You're just scared. You don't know. They could have been benign and you're just freaked out. You don't know. So then the light gets to him and he's hiding kind of like in a little sandbank. When the light gets closer, he sees that it's a snowflake. It's a 6-sided prism, a hexagonal prism with inside is blue, and on each little point has like flames coming out of it. So I guess like the flames are like propelling it in directions. It had intelligence, he says, but he felt that it was devoid of feeling. But I think, as this is what you'll understand in the next story, it had 112, but it didn't have 224. You'll understand that if you watch the next video. But at the same time, like there's no way that they could have communicated with each other likely. So he doesn't know that it's devoid of feeling, guy. And then it carried him away. He was overcome with nausea and he blacked out. And then when he woke up, he was at the top of one of the spindly towers inside the balloon near the flame, like just floating. And he can see, but he's just like stuck there. Which is not it's not great. Oh yeah, he had a gun. I forgot. He has a gun in his pocket and he uses that and he shoots it to like propel him because he's like floating zero gravity style. So he uses the propulsion of shooting the gun to kind of move him because he can't push off of anything. And you may be thinking, like, okay, you propelled yourself off, but you're still 100 feet up. The author heard you and said, "Don't worry, we'll just send him slow. We just send him slow." He's like, "I'm out of here. Peace out. I have had enough of radium hunting." And he goes all the way back through the red sand, and he finds his plane, and he grabs some of the radium and puts it in his pocket because apparently that's worth like $1 million or something, and somehow gets out of there in his plane. But he couldn't. That's the one thing upon looking at this kind of a little more distantly. Like he was sunk down and like the birds can't get out, but then like you can get out. Why can you get out? How come you're better than the birds? I don't think you're better than the birds, bro. You're not. You're not better than the birds. You're not. There's a hole there. There's a plot hole there. And the story ends. Thus the manuscript ends, because remember, this was a letter that friend was reading. If the reader doubts the truth of the letter, you may see the metal man in the Tyburn Museum. And then I Googled it and that's not real. But I was like so into it. I was like, I wonder, I just wondered. And I said, three exclamation point. I thought it was absolutely great. Imagination. I liked that we created some visuals that you had to really try to imagine, like this snowflake creature, the spin, like just all of it. It was very strange. And I think that's neat. And it makes you read it slowly because you have to stop and be like, wait, what's happening? You have to think about it. Not in a bad way, but just like when I read a book, I am I visualize what's happening, and the characters have voices and they don't have like big changes in voices, but like I read it in my head as I think the character would say it with that intonation, whatever. Superb.